Hi, I'm Nate and you're watching Photolearningism. Thanks for joining in for another live show. Got some really exciting material to cover tonight about cloning technique in Paint.net. I know this is a very popular thing in the other mainstream tools, Photoshop and the others, but I really wanted to give some clear guidance on how to do that in Paint.net because it does work. It requires maybe a little more effort in Paint.net, but again, Paint.net is free. I harp on that a lot. I don't get paid to mention them, but it's a fantastic tool, so let's check it out. Okay, so this is actually one of the first good examples I could think of to show, and this one should be pretty obvious what it is we're going to attempt here, okay? In that we have a pencil. I made this pencil block, and as I was loading up the pencils and taking pictures of it to show it off, I realized, we got a pencil here without a point. That's really not to worry about though, because we can fix that. Ultimately, what I ended up with, just to give you an example, was this. And personally, I can't really tell that there's any alteration that took place, other than the fact that it's the same color. But it looks very realistic. So let's just jump in and let's take a look at what we can do there. So in Paint.net, you have to be a little layer conscious in that while it does keep a very accurate history of everything you're doing in case you need to roll steps back, there's not a ton of interaction between those layers. So you end up making a lot of layers. Such it is. It's free. I've mentioned that. So I'm going to start by creating a layer in case I need to easily come back to something. We're going to come in nice and close. And actually the layer is very important here because we're going to borrow elements of this other layer to help us draw in the missing pieces of this one. I'm going to add one more layer that's blank just so we can keep what we're doing isolated. And let's get to it. Like other tools, it has the clone stamp. That should be pretty familiar if you've been using photo editing or alteration software. Premise is pretty simple in that we're going to pick a space that we want to start duplicating. And you can pick your point of origin, and as you move, that point of origin is going to move depending on how the mouse shifts and moves around. So let's say that I really want to borrow this point here. So I'm going to start with that layer. I'm actually going to control left click. I'm using a PC obviously in this version. I don't believe there's a Paint.net version for Mac, so sorry. This is the PC world. But again, we've set our point of origin. You can see how there's just this circle at the left over there. I'm going to click onto my new layer, and I'm just going to start drawing. And you can see as I do that, that point of origin moves with me. And I am going to carefully just start by tracing out the first part of this. Now obviously this doesn't fully cover the point in the area I want to do, so we have to get a little creative in that. I'm going to reset the point of origin on that original layer again, and then come back over here and do something very similar. Make sure I'm on my alteration layer. And that I'm going to try to line this up such that we can put this back again. And one of the things you're going to be watching out for is the hardness that's coming over when you do this part. That gives you an ability to feather it a little bit as you go, which you probably will have to do a little bit of blending technique. I'm drawing the wrong layer here. I want to grab this, and I want to pop that. It's a lot of back and forth, a lot of here and there, and that's okay. So now we have a starting point, and that's pretty good. What I want to do then is I want to get in close and trim it up a little bit to give it more of a realistic feel, because we have some extra material here. So we're we're going to switch tools to the eraser, and I'm going to make sure that this is fairly hard in its tip. I don't want it too soft because if it's too blurry, it just doesn't look real. So I'm going to get in here and just trim this away a bit. And some of this may be a little too fast. I am trying to move things along for the sake of presentation here. There we go. And what you could do from this point is you could bring it down a bit, and you could feather in a little bit if you really wanted to try to match some of the current focusing plane. Let's pull back out. It's starting to look like it belongs. This part here looks a little funky though, so we're going to tighten that up again. It's already starting to come into focus there a little bit. What I would like to do is actually straighten out this bit. It's going to be small adjustments, and again, you're going to be making small tweaks as you go to fill in that space and play with the hardness, play with the softness, make it look like it belongs. I'm going to stop there just again because that's the basic idea of it, and I wanted to give you some other examples because this is a fairly inanimate object, not organic at all, and we could play with kind of the colorization of it a little bit just to give it some ability. Actually, what I probably should do is I should be doing this as a separate layer with an overlay. That would probably make a lot more sense. We're going to push this into RGB, which is actually not doing the effect I thought it would. That's interesting. Go back to color balance. A little interesting. I'm not sure exactly what's happening here. Okay, I see. You copied some onto that. Again, yeah, layer conscious in this. Let's duplicate that. A little bit of playing around. There we go. Just wasn't getting what I wanted out of that. Alright, so yeah, we're looking to tweak this to really anything except what it was. And yeah, I feel like highlights are the best coverage of that. And then we're going to flip this to an overlay type, which should start to bring it to the place that we want. More or less. We may have to do a little bit of trimming of the stem there as well. Play with the opacity a bit there too. Let's just tighten that up a bit more. Too much. So essentially, again, you can see the concept in play here. I don't want to spend a huge amount of time, but again, looks pretty realistic with not much work. We've been working on this for maybe a couple of minutes. So another example would be here. This was a portrait, one of my boys, and I realized after I took the picture here that there's a little bit of nosiness going on down here, and I wanted to try a similar tactic to straighten that up, and really you can. It's not that difficult using the rubber stamp. This one you don't really have to do the layer play because you're not really trying to draw something that's not there, you're just trying to smooth over what is there. So for this, I'm going to back off on the hardness quite a bit there, and maybe step up the brush size. If you can go larger, that's always better because you have a larger surface area to blur with. If it's too small, it becomes more obvious. So get as close in as you feel comfortable with first off. Set your point of origin. That's Control-Shift. And start bringing over details. Now sometimes you are forced to go smaller because it just doesn't look right otherwise. Alright, we can start pulling out, and already you can see here that that dry patch under his nose, you can't even tell. And that was really, really easy to do. All we've done is done some feathering cloning, and that has enhanced that picture to the point where it's really not even, can't even see it. Now I can see there's a little bit of difference there between the red patch, so what you may want to do is spend a little more time, dial that down, spend some more time using finesse to make it look like there's no weird bump in the face, that kind of stuff. And that can take time, you know, because the details matter, but again, that's a very simple thing where I've just altered a face. And that one was very simple because we were just smoothing over and tightening up. That's a bit different from the pencil in that we're trying to recreate something based on something else. So the last example I really wanted to dip into here is one you may have seen. I put a video up on my YouTube channel with this recently, and that was isolating this tree. I spent about an hour and a half on it, and a lot of that was trying to figure out how could I possibly do this. I really wanted to get rid of the mausoleum. I wanted to get rid of this extra pine tree back there, and that was really hard to do. In the end result even, I mean, there was a lot that I could see needed to be done better, but it was a concept idea of if I wanted to spend a couple hours really doing this and coming up with something good, yeah, this would work. You could do this in this tool and produce a nice product. So just to give you the end result of all this was this is what I ended up with. Some things are not as tidy as I'd like, but it looks pretty cool, right? So to give you again the case and concept of this, I'm not going to go through all the different colorizing and all that because that's a whole different tutorial, but what I will do is go over the kind of the basic starting point of how I did this. I'm going to come over here to the mausoleum and we'll get going with that. You're going to start with the rubber stamp. We're going to start erasing the mausoleum by cloning over it. If you can, go big. You can't always. So you try to find the most appropriate match for the situation. Set your point of origin and start going at it. We are going to end up losing a little bit of the tree at the start because it's in the way, but that's okay. You will have to reset your point of origin a bit because, again, the space you're cloning from is not very big, and that's going to move when you move to do things. And so sometimes you just don't have any choice except to reset that point, and that can get a little tedious, but can also help you accomplish your goal of really trying to wipe something out. So that is perhaps enough space. I want to make it a little bigger so we can get a really good idea of this. Make my brush a little bigger now that we have some more space to work with. Again, we are losing some tree real estate here, but I'm not really worried about that yet. I do like to do a little bit of blending as we go as well, where we're going to borrow some of this nice blue over here and mix that in. Careful of duplicating branches as they come in. So you could spend your time doing that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time right now, but you get the idea. We are cloning over parts of the sky to kind of continue this over, and do be a little conscious of the cloud patterns. There's a lot to think about with doing that. You could add in a little bit of color too, just so you don't completely lose the blue, where you can borrow it from other spots. You could do it as a brushing, which could help, especially if you're doing a large area like this, where you just use the color picker, pick a spot of the blue you're after, and carefully drop down the hardness and just start popping that in some as well. That's another possibility here, but again, for the more realistic aspect of this, you're going to be looking for the cloud pattern, so Clone Tool is a little stronger for that. Brush is a little too big. There we go. Okay, so place to start. Now, drawing the branches. I'm not gonna lie, this is very tedious. It is not gonna be a simple 1-2 button click thing. This is intentional effort, but it'll get you there. So first thing we're gonna do here is come to our working layer here. Actually, I'm just going to duplicate that one more time for safety. And I am going to drop the opacity down of this layer, because that'll let us see the layer underneath. And then I'm going to get my clone tool back. We're going to go really small, really tiny. We're going to get in close here. This will help me figure out where I stopped, where I blurred it out, and then figure out how big these branches are. That's about right. Hi, Tim Time. Thanks for following. Good to have some company. All right, so looks like a good place to start would be right about here. So in the source layer, okay, from the very beginning, this is where we got to pick. Okay, what are we going to be drawing? I'm going to put my origin point right there. I'm going to move back thanks, into my working layer. And this is where it could get a little tricky, is that I want to put my brush right on top of that if I can, because that, if you can see it, it puts them right on top of each other. So literally you're cloning and drawing right on the same group of pixels, which is, I think that's pretty cool. I don't know if anybody else has tried out this technique, but you're literally just going to trace branches one at a time and bring them into the new layer. And what this is going to give you the ability to do is you're going to draw in these branches, as essentially isolating them from the back. And it's not really isolating, you're recreating them, but it will get you to that point where you can have just a tree and not a mausoleum and another tree. And as I said, I mean, this is not a quick turnaround. This is a lot of effort, but it does open up that capability to really show you the things and the places you could go with this. And I'm going to flip up opacity here. We can start to see some of these branches come back, and again, these are just quick draw-ins. If you want to be real realistic, and this is what I came up against, you will have to go back in and do some more effort with kind of tightening this up at places. You may have to come back in and size them up appropriately, change your brush size, and really make sure that it matches up organically with what's there. And that will take a lot of time and effort. But that is the basic premise. And that is how you can separate that out from the other elements there. I use the same process and technique over here with this tree. It does get a little tricky because it can be hard to see. And sometimes I felt like I was going blind working on this. But you can make out enough where you can kind of guess your way through it. You can play with the contrast and the colors a little bit to somewhat pull that out and get yourself a better view of that. So again, it will take a little bit of effort to work around those other obstacles, but you can get your tree. I did play around a little bit, and you'll see it in the video if you go watch it on YouTube, where I did experiment with trying to trim it out, trying to lasso it out. There is a lasso tool here in Paint.net. But again, you're going to work up against a lot of different effort no matter how you try to do this. There's really no way out of it. I did play around with selection techniques. I did play around with trying to create some kind of alpha mask. Really, just because of all the different variances and because of the interplay of colors that are so similar, structures and shapes that are so similar, the tool just couldn't figure out the difference. So really, this kind of a job, this kind of a project is a lot of careful drawing no matter how you do it. So this is the method I arrived at, where we're tracing and redrawing them back in. And I think it works. It requires some refining, but it can work. So those are the examples. Again, the final result I ended up with this as an experiment was this one, and I had done some stylized and colored to my preference. You can see the difference here where the mausoleum is gone, that other pine tree is gone. We get a nice big look at the open sky. You get to see the ground around it, and it makes it look like more like the tree belongs in the shot. The other one was, I could see the potential, but it was really hard to pick it out. So this really brought me to the place I was after. So from that, I'll call it a success. It's not a completely realistic end result. I'll come in close here there just so this full disclosure. You can kind of see how, again, these are blocky. They're not quite fully matched to what was there. And again, I didn't do a lot of brush play to bring this up and tighten that in. And I could have, but as it was, I had spent an hour and a half just doing this proof of concept, and I just didn't have it in me to keep going on that. So again, I think it came out beautiful just as a proof of concept alone. But again, that's because I poured a lot of blood, sweat, and tears just getting these branches. Anything over here, that was a lot of work. So in any case, the purpose of this was to let you see, again, the capabilities of Paint.net, the free open source tool. Go out there and download it. If you're not into buying up the professional tools, again, you will get a lot of functionality. There's probably faster ways. I've seen faster ways to do this in Photoshop, excuse me. So that may be worth it to you if time is a thing and you're really after that efficiency. But if you're on me, where you're trying to figure things out on a budget, trying to figure things out on a really economic way of doing things, this is a way you can get it done. So hope that was helpful to you. And if Paint.net is an interesting topic, it does, looking at the number of people who followed those topics recently, that seems to be an eye catcher for a lot of you. Let me know, because I'll continue to do that. I've considered doing comparisons against other tools just so we can kind of see the power of one versus the other and the effort in one versus the other. If that's interesting, let me know. Give me some feedback. Definitely connect with me on natesaralo.com. That's the gateway to all my different social platforms. You can find me on YouTube from there. You can find me on Twitch. You can find me on Instagram. Please do follow me, connect with me, subscribe so we can stay in touch, so you can see the new and interesting things that we're trying out and trying to accomplish here. Thank you so much for joining. It was great to have people watching and giving feedback. Yeah, I got you there, Tim Time. Thanks. And yeah, do come back. We'll be doing live streams every Saturday, 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll be doing hopefully things that are of interest. Give me some love and let me know what works for you. Yep, YouTube is Photolearningism. I'll throw a link in the chat there for you. I can actually bring that up on the screen as well if that's helpful. We're going over to here. Yep, I'm on Mixer as well. So, a couple places you can find me. So, indeed, thank you very much. Have a great night, everybody.